A very warm welcome from our side here from Schlotau and Bauer to a new webcast. We are really happy that you joined us today.
For joining today's session. I am kind of excited to introduce you the new features and improvements we have brought into Lisa with this new release. There's a lot to cover, from the big innovations we did to many smaller enhancements, and hopefully that will make your working in Lisa a bit easier. So let's dive right in. So the first, I open this project here. One of the biggest additions is the work we have done on the web map integration in basis data. And you can see a web map behind our network. For that, I just need to click on this extra icon here, what you see, map. And in the background, you see that you could have a web map tile service integrated. So why is this good? It has a couple of use cases. It now plays a bigger role, especially for CITS applications. So if you want to, especially for creation of map files. And in Lisa 8.2, this feature of web map kind of simplifies creating maps. Yeah. Until now in Lisa, you were limited to your site plan. We could draw lanes limited to what we see here. But now, let's say this was 50 meters or something. But in maps, you need lanes bigger than the one allowed by the site plan, 300 meters or even to the next intersection. So with this, you see I can zoom out, and if I want, I can even extend my lane outside of the site plan until the neighboring intersection. Yeah, simply clicking and dragging it. So with this feature 8.2, we can extend these lanes much further thanks to this integration of web map. There is also a feature where I can, with this, you kind of made it easy how you do the georeferencing, because if I go under menu and I have an option to make my site plan transparent. So once I increase the transparency of the site plan, as you see, so I could see if the location of my lanes, what I have placed here, are correct. Previously, to check this georeference of lanes and connection, we had to export KML files and view them externally. Now you can check all georeferencing directly within Lisa itself. Okay, so how do I configure this web map? To configure it, basically I just need to go in project management here, and we have included under the settings, and I click on settings, there's an extra option called map. Yeah, so of course you need an internet connection to get this web map services. And here you see this web map server. So by default, you get an OpenStreet map server from us, from Schlotau. This is delivered as standard. However, it's possible to configure alternative map services, which you could find on internet. Yeah, there are, if on internet you just Google Maps or Bing Maps with the corresponding X, Y, Z links, then you can find your own map server link. Yeah. So once I do OK, then I go to basic data. As I showed before, I open my intersection. Once you connect to the server, it will show you if the correct connection has been made to the server. And then once you are here, you click on this, you should be able to see this a map behind. So in addition to this web mapping, we have also important kind of update to the way intersection could be configured, created, because before you needed a site plan. And now I could basically start without a site plan just to create directly on the map. Yeah. So how can I do this? Let's have a look. I will create an intersection here, just an example intersection. Let's test example. Yeah. And here on the right side, a new feature of giving an address. So this is the address from our office. I put in, click and enter. Then this will look for this area. This is already some georeference. What I can do, so I search for this area in a project management, and I right click here, for example, where I want to have where I want to georeference it. I say define my GIS coordinates. Yeah. And then this has georeference already in the project management for me, and I can directly start creating. I go back here. Sorry, I've not selected this. I go back here. Example. I go directly here. And now it should be possible for me to open the map directly. So I go here. I don't need a site plan, and I can immediately start drawing my lanes connection directly on the map without needing the site plan. So I click here and I see my stop line is here, and I start creating directly on the map. So this is another use case of this web map service. Staying to the point of map, there is another feature we defined in 8.2, which is called revocable lanes. For that, I will go back to the example which we have created. Yeah, go back here, together, open this example. So from 8.2, this is possible, as I said, now possible to define revocable lanes. What are revocable lanes? Just as a background, these are dynamic lanes, also temporal dynamic lanes. What I mean that these dynamic lanes can be opened, closed, or changed direction depending on the time of the day. Yeah, let's understand it better with an example. So I will turn off the mapper now. I zoom into my site plan here. And let's have a look on this lane here, 25. Yeah, this is a departure lane. But imagine that this lane is used as a revocable lane. And at some point of the point during the day, that this is used as approach lane. So how I can do this in Lisa now, I simply have to right click here. And there is an option which says create overlaying lane. So I click on this create overlaying lane. And as you see here, Lisa has created one more lane over this. This is of course not visible, but you can determine it based on the numbering, what you see here, 25 and 26. Yeah. If I click on 25 here on this lane, sorry, then you would see the attributes in the properties table on the left. You see the lane ID, which is the ID of this overlaid lane we have created. And you will see underneath the properties related to this lane, and also an extra attribute which says overlays the lane. Yeah. So these attribute are automatically assigned to this lane. And this overlays the lane is also an attribute for map file. So what I will do now, I've selected this lane, and I would click here and make it an approach lane, as I said before, for an example. Yeah. And when I click on this, I can of course also now connect this approach lane to this departure lane here. So it is working like an approach lane. And it's important, once I have done that, I click on is a revocable lane. As you see on the left side, there's this option. And once this revocable lane is set on this view underneath, there is this matrix of revocable lanes and STP tab will appear. Yeah, if it was already not visible. And this metric lists the lane IDs of all lanes with this is revocable lane attribute and all the signal timing plans. And here, you can assign the revocable lanes to the signal timing plans. Yeah, this allows for precise control over when each revocable lane is active. So this is a crucial step for generating correct map messages for vehicles. And in the end, this information is then used by the roadside unit to create dispatch messages for vehicles. This is another addition, and staying on the topic of CITS, we have another attribute we introduced, which is called remote intersections. Yeah. So this attribute is basically for the departure lanes. You can specify how they connect to the neighboring intersections. Yeah. So for that, if I click on this departure lane here, maybe I will select here a departure lane. Yeah. Yeah, I have selected this. And on the left side, you see this option has remote intersection. So if I click on this, you get these attributes. So as I said here, you are defining how this lane is connecting to the neighboring intersection. And you have to define, when you define it has remote intersection, the region ID and the intersection ID of the neighboring intersection. Yeah. Moreover, you also need a connection ID. And this is basically the ID of the approach lane of the neighboring intersection where the connection is actually taking place. And for this, you don't need to create any extra connection in Lisa. Lisa is automatically generating a connection ID for these remote connections. Yeah. And then all this information is also included in map export. So in map XML. These were the big information for the first part, which is also included in Lisa manual. We have updated the Lisa manual for 8.2 in detail. So you can also check in there for more detailed explanations. But staying to the topic of export, I would also like to show you the next big feature in export. So these are some smaller yet important changes, I would say. Up to now, Lisa always exported the latest map version. Yeah. But in practice, the roadside units in the field may not always be updated, and they might have old firmwares. So with 8.2, you can now choose between different map versions. So I go on export, as you see. I click on OCIT export, and here you see different versions which we have. Yeah. So version 3 is still the default, but version 4 is also available, especially for some projects which involve revocable lanes. So it's project-specific version we have here. And you can choose from these versions in Lisa 8.2. Other than that, we also have made these settings, which were hidden before, now also visible to the user to avoid issues. There were some wrong assumptions about these parameters, and that's why now it's visible for the users to view them here. It's on the surface, and they're not hidden anymore. So the user can manually adjust or change it, and also then reset to the values which are actually recommended by most of the also recommended default values by the RSUs. So you can simply click here, and then you can get the default values. Yeah. And once you have defined all these, once you have defined the correct georeferencing for your site plan, you can export it as habitual. Yeah. Okay. So I would stay to the topic of CITS. And another major area improvement is the CITS logic. Here I would prefer to show you with a slide. So with 8.2, we have included a new CITS library, which is version 2.1. And this supports updated map and SREM functions. Yeah. So while we were working on pilot projects, we realized that some extensions were necessary. For example, as you see here, we have 5 new functions for map, 5 for SRM. For instance, in map, there were cases where multiple different signal groups were associated with different lanes at connections. And we needed more detailed functions to kind of correctly determine a signal group from the map data. Therefore, we added these 5 new map functions that allow for much more precise queries. And similarly, we have for SREM functions, 5 new functions, which is expanding the flexibility. So in this version, it allows all available content to be queried and not only approach, which was the case before, the ARM number. And now you are more flexible to query, for example, inbound lane, outbound lane, or connection information. Yeah. And additionally, there are information such as vehicle speed and distance to stop line, which can now also be transmitted. Yeah, normally these information were available in CAM messages and are optional in SREM messages. But as we learn from projects, this could also be important to get these information from SREM. Yeah. And because of these, so we are coming much further with these significant changes in CITS, and because of this development, I think we are matured enough now. And then I go back to Lisa, and here go to test site, maybe just to show the last point in CITS functionality. Where we made some more improvements regarding how you send SREM in CAM messages during a simulation. So until now, it was possible to send SREM CAM in the simulation by right-clicking here, and then you could define your SREM here, give in the vehicle role, provide the inbound, outbound leg, and then you click here on send. So this is what was possible before and still possible. But in addition to that, we have now in 8.2 the possibility to send SREM and CAM messages also via test routines. Yeah. So here, for example, we have created one example for you. And as an action, you can define if you want to send an SREM or if you want to, yeah. And then you define here all the attributes. You can choose the inbound here, for example, the inbound lane, or you want to choose the inbound leg or the connection. So there are various possibilities to choose from. And similarly, you define the request, the priority request, or different kind of what SREM is sending. The intersection ID, request ID as habitual, and manually give in the ETA. And then at the same time, I have defined the CAM message, yeah, which is basically with the speed and the distance. And then I am defining again an updated SREM message where I send in the request of SREM update with an updated ETA. Yeah. And then also I am defining a kind of deregistration SREM once my bus has passed the intersection. So yeah, I have defined this, and as usual, if I run on the simulation here, and on the underneath the ITS buffer, you could see I have selected CAM and SREM. If I run fast, if I go here, I should see the time. I forgot what I have defined in there, but you would see an SREM in my window below. Oh, maybe I've not chosen the test. This could probably happen. Yes, I have not. I will double select here. Now I've chosen this test routine. I save and close. And I restart here. And at my second 20 here, yes, you would see all the information about the message which has been sent in the CITS buffer. Okay, so that's about CITS. Another change here in the test, while staying in the test side, is possibility now to export the test routine with, so here if I do signal timing plan, I can export not with the cycle time, but I have the possibility to choose free from my graphic, the beginning and the end of the protocol which I want to be exported, and it could be exported as a signal timing plan. So if I click on here, and you see, one second, that this time has been selected, and I can export it directly as signal timing plan. If I go into my signal timing plan, open it, then this is exported from the test side. And while I have it open simultaneously, I can also, for example, if I want to export, second, okay, maybe I will just close it quickly here. Yeah, because I am using here, so I go to my test site, open the project, I let it run. Yeah, and as I showed that I can export this protocol as my signal timing plan here, and I can choose the defined time here, not the defined cycle time. Maybe I want to choose more cycle times, more than one, then I can define it here, and then I can export it directly, and this should come in this should appear in my signal timing plan list underneath. Okay, then I can go to the next small changes which I have, which we have created in this version. So another new development is in the batch print. This new feature I can show here if you click on batch print. So this was more a requirement from the customers that you can print. So when we have small parameter sets table, if I go here, for example, there are small parameter sets table. Now in 8.2, this is possible to print all these tables together on a single page. Yeah, as I said, this requirement from customer, and we made it possible in 8.2 to print these tables on a single page. And staying on batch print, the another new change here is that you can save selected pages in location default. So for that, you need to right click here. Yeah, and you see that the screen signs that what are the pages which are selected. So if you click here, save selected pages, and it will save them. So for me, my location default file is called default, and you can save them in your default file. And whenever you create new project with this location default, these selected pages will also be there in your batch print with this location default. Yeah. So this is another change, new change in 8.2. Something again small but interesting is in the print profile. If I go in settings, and if I go under my print profile here, so for company branding, we have expanded the formats which you can use before. Before it was possible to have bitmap. Now you can also import image files, so PNG, SVG. If I click on here, and if I see here, these are the possible image formats which are now supported from Lisa's side to import in for your company logo. So not only bitmap, but JPG, PNG, SVG, and so on. Okay, so this is basically for better quality and flexibility. Okay, then another small changes in public transport. We introduced the ability to add different comments for different PT time parameter sets. Yeah, if I have here 2 of them, I can add different comments for both of sets. So this was also requirements from customers, which is possible now in 8.2 to define different comments for different parameters. Okay, then again, new feature, a new improvement is in the import option. It is possible now in Lisa 8.2 to import OCIT-C 2.0. Yeah. So basically since Lisa 8.0, we have supported exporting data using the OCIT-C standard, yeah, which is already more detailed information exchanging compared to the OCIT-E. Yeah. But with 8.2, we also support import with OCIT-C 2.0, which opens up even more broader interoperability possibilities with external systems. I go to Signal Group to show you another change what we have created. So in Lisa till now, there are various possibilities to sort your signal groups, but from Lisa 8.2, you can also sort your signal groups as by sub-intersections. So as you see, this column of sub-intersections, and if I click on menu, and I click on sub-intersection, my signal groups will be sorted by the sub-intersection. So this is an extra sorting feature in our signal group table. Yeah. Then to the next functionality, which is about the not signalized intersections. There we have also 2 additional changes. I go here for this example. As you see on the top here, so first of all, we have added an option for user to choose in if they want to add the heavy good vehicles general factor or not. So basically, up to now, Lisa assumed a small percentage of heavy good vehicles, about 10% by default. However, there were cases that when there were no heavy good vehicles, this should not be assumed at all. But it was still assumed, and this 0.1 factor was in the calculations. So with 8.2, now users have the option to exclude heavy good vehicles entirely from the calculation when doing this converting to this NLSA values. So this provide more accurate results for such scenario when there is no HGV. Yeah, as you see, if I choose here, the passenger car unit is changed, the conversion. So if I click in here, and you will have a different conversion value. Secondly, this is also a very special use case. So I will not go in detail, but this is about this rounding the intermediate results. So this happens when you have a case when there could be a demand 0 and when you're calculating a mixed stream capacity, then there were some discrepancies in the calculation which we were getting from the formula. And we found out that this was due to how the rounding is done in Lisa. So that's why we give you now option how you want to round your results. So either you can use Lisa default or you can use the HPS, which is a German standard default, which uses 3 decimal places. Yeah. So these are small yet important changes in the NLSA, not signalized intersections in Lisa. So this was more or less about Lisa. Another feature which is important, which we did, was in the VISSIM Lisa interface. Yeah. So I will open VISSIM for that here. So this new Lisa VISSIM interface is also available in our download portal, and yeah, it could be downloaded from there. Here I have an example with 8 intersections, and as you see, for the signal controllers here, we have new 4 extra columns available. Yeah, so these are the 4 operating modes available. So the traffic actuated, the private vehicle, public transport, and coordination, where you can define in the operating modes. Yeah, so these are the new 4 columns, which are now possible with the new interface. And other than that, as you see, I have here various scenarios defined. Yeah. So when you have multiple scenarios, this could all be set. The program function, these operating mode could be set here. And when I start the simulation, I don't need to extra go in the control panel and set them one by one. Now this could be done, all of it here from this new interface. So this doesn't have to be done extra like before. Okay, I think this brings me to the end of all the big new features which we have introduced in Lisa 8.2.
Thanks a lot for joining us today. And as always, we are at your service if you have further questions. Please contact us at service@schlotauer.de if you have any technical questions, or if you want a quote, an offer, have any sales-related questions, then please contact us at lisa@schlotauer.de. Thanks and have a nice day.